You know what? I think I saw a Richard Wolff thing where he was talking to Chris Hedges, and I kind of want to watch this, chat. Would you guys be against watching this? It's Richard Wolff and Chris Hedges. Now, I like Chris Hedges. I do like Chris Hedges. I think that he's a little bit too he has the leftist problem of holier than thou syndrome, which is fine. I tolerate holier than thou syndrome. I literally do. I think all leftists should get a little bit of holier than thou syndrome. He just leans a little bit too much for me. That being said, I really do like him. That's just a minor, very, very minor quibble. Very, very minor quibble. He's very right most of the time. But he does have he does have a little bit of the Western leftism of like, the Soviet Union was so bad. And it's like,
past levels. The capitalist system will begin to consume the structures that sustain it. It will prey upon, in the name of austerity and government efficiency, the working class and the poor, driving them ever deeper into debt and poverty, and diminishing the capacity of the state to serve the needs of ordinary citizens. It will, as it has, increasingly relocate jobs, including both manufacturing and professional positions, to countries with cheap pools of labor. Industries will mechanize their workplaces. This will trigger an economic assault on not only the working class, but the middle class, the bulwark of a capitalist system that will at first be disguised by the imposition of massive personal debt as incomes decline or remain stagnant. Politics in the late stages of capitalism will become subordinate to economics, leading to political parties hollowed out of any real political content and abjectly subservient to the dictates of corporations and oligarchs. But as Marx warned, there is a limit to an economy built on the scaffolding of debt expansion. There comes a moment, Marx warned, when there will be no new markets available and no new pools of people who can take on more debt. Capitalism will then turn on the so-called free market itself, along with the values and traditions it claims to defend. It will, in its final stages, pillage the systems and structures that make capitalism possible. It will resort, as it causes widespread suffering, to harsher forms of oppression. It will attempt in a frantic last stand to maintain its profits by looting and pillaging state institutions, contradicting its stated nature. The final stages of capitalism, as Marx grasped, is not capitalism at all. Corporations gobble down government expenditures, in essence taxpayer money, like pigs at a trough. Then the system crashes. Joining me to discuss our late-stage capitalism and what it means for us and the global economy is Professor Richard Wolff. Professor Wolff is a professor emeritus of economics at the University of Massachusetts Amherst and a visiting professor in the graduate program in international affairs of the New School. He has also taught economics at Yale University, City University of New York, University of Utah, and the University of Paris. So let's talk about late-stage capitalism, the hollowing out of state institutions, Doge, and what the capitalists in the short term, of course, are going to make lots of money, but what it's going to do to the rest of us.
Well, I think your opening, Chris, as often your openings are, is wonderfully comprehensive. It leaves me kind of amazed at how much more I can provide in the way of specifics and concreteness. I won't be departing. I think you've captured it really very, very well. But let me drive some of the points home. Part of what you're watching with the Trump administration can be, and in my judgment,
by the way, here's the thing. By the way, chat, I don't think of myself as God, okay? I make mistakes all the time. I'm sure you guys can think about the mistakes I've made over the years. I've misread people. I've trusted people I shouldn't trust. In my personal life, in my political career, it happens all the time, okay? So just because I criticize someone a little bit doesn't mean I hate them. In fact, when I criticize someone, I do so from the position of respect. I think if I criticize someone on the merits, it's because I respect them. And if they react like a child, well, then my respect goes away.
To be understood as a war on the working class at home, but also abroad. What is being done? Let me start at the opposite end. What is being done in Europe is remarkable. A deal that came out of World War II, in which the United States would defeat
that
the new enemy, the Soviet Union, barely a few months after being the great ally. It became overnight the great enemy, showing a kind of flexibility which is at once astonishing, but also impressive in terms of meeting your own needs and rearranging the pieces on the board that you're playing with. The deal that was made was the following. We, the United States, we have two big worries right now. Number one, the New Deal. An awful lot of money was taxed or borrowed from rich corporations and the wealthy people to provide a remarkable array of mass services. Unemployment insurance, a minimum wage, the Social Security system, government employment. This had to be rolled back. And as you know very well, our last 50 years are the story of the rollback of that New Deal. But it also required smashing the socialists and communists who had created that New Deal with their alliance for a while with the Democratic Party. All of that had to be undone and was undone. The second great anxiety at the end of the war was that we would fall back into a depression. Let's remember, it was only the war that finally got us out of the horrible collapse of capitalism, the worst in its history, from 1929 to 1940-41. And only by taking the remaining many, many millions of people, I'm going to be simple now, putting half of them in uniform and the other half making the uniforms, we were able. And then the great worry, and it was very serious, at the end of the war, 45, what would now happen? We would demobilize all these people out of the military, out of producing for the military. What would prevent us from slipping back? And you can see the government did extraordinary things. The GI Bill, to take all those soldiers and instead of having them go into the unemployment, stick them in the university where the government would pay for it. The housing program, the highway program, all of them. But what people don't recognize was that there was another part of this. And that was the international part with Europe. The problem was Europe had the same depression history as this country did. And during that time, as in the United States, socialist and communist parties became much stronger than they had ever been in Europe.
Yeah, brother.
So at the end of the war, you had the worry about slipping back, but you had an even bigger one. That you had very strong socialist and communist parties who had led the movement of the 1930s to get social services, which were much more generous in Europe than they were in this country. Plus, the socialists and communists provided the militants who were the anti-fascist resistance. So they were popular, they were strong. De Gaulle's first government after 45 had to have Communist Party people in the cabinet. For Italy, the second biggest party in the 20 years after the war was the Italian Communist Party. And
what Wolff is leading out is that the CIA basically engaged in a, quiet civil war in Italy, murdering dozens and dozens of Italian leaders of the trade union movement, of the socialist movement, of the communist movement. It was bloodbath.
Could go on.
Called Operation Gladio.
And they all had the Soviet Union literally a few hours by train from them. So they
had a big civil war in Greece. Yeah, we supported the Nazi collaborators in the civil war
about what was going on. And then the alliance with the Soviet Union
didn't do anything, fucking loser.
So what the United States did is cut a deal. We will solve our economic problem by putting Keynesianism on steroids. The government is going to come in and do what? Save us from the Soviet menace, build up the military industrial, and say to the Europeans, we'll take care of it. We'll provide you with the defense umbrella, we'll provide you with all the support, and all you have to do is make sure you crush the socialists and communists at home, and you are a good bulwark against the Soviet Union. And to that end, here's what we're going to do. You won't have to cover defense. We're taking care of that with our domestic Keynesian, military Keynesianism. And you're going to take the money you would have had to spend to provide the social services that will allow you to compete with what the Russians are offering their people and had been already for quite.
The funniest take that I have is that Stalin was too soft toward the West. That is my most tanky take.
Quite a while at that time. So you're going to compete with them, and then we're going to take our National Endowment for Democracy, our CIA, and all the rest, and make sure the right politicians willing to commit to this deal sit at the top of the government in France, in Germany, in Britain.
Exactly
and we
right.
all know the story of all of the money and the sloshing that was done. That was it. And that was the way we were going to destroy the socialists and communists inside. And
see, Stalin knew FDR. And so he thought that somebody like FDR, the Soviet Union, could work with them. So he was blindsided when FDR died and got replaced by anti-communist extraordinaire Truman and the Dulles brothers.
weaken or destroy, if we could, the one outside, and all of it justifying the massive government spending. But the problem is, all of that was paid for, to touch on your point, by debt. The United States does not like to fight wars with taxes. It likes to fight wars with money borrowed. Because if you tax the people, the opposition to the war would be much bigger and arise much sooner. So you can't do that. You borrow the money. Here's the irony. The Europeans were major lenders for a while to the United States to fund the Keynesianism that protected them from having to use their money for their own defense. The ironies of how this all fit together are a charming story that's never quite been put down on paper. What we have now is the collapse of that deal. It's very important historically, and I know you do the history too, Chris, something we have in common, which I think is part of whatever effect we have. The story, it fits together our situation coming out of World War II and working out this way for another lease on life with lots of domestic government spending. But the problem is, so much of it was done on debt. And so much of it was done without understanding of the special moment. The United States had no competitor coming out of World War II. Britain, France, Germany, Italy, Japan, Russia, they were all destroyed. We came out king of the hill. Our economy was in better shape coming out of the war than it was going in, and no one else could say that. And the result was a very bizarre, unique, special moment that could not possibly last. I think historians will look back, be rather impressed it lasted as long as it did. But in any case, it is now over.
What do you think about militaristic socialism? Is that the best strat? My answer to that is it's the only strat that works, unfortunately, because whenever like a nice socialist wins elections, they get murdered. Like Castro is a perfect example, right? So Castro won the revolution in Cuba. there's this belief in America that Castro was this like unrepentant far left communist who hated America and wanted to nuke America, wanted to fight America. And it's like, actually, after the revolution, he wanted to have a peaceful relationship with the US. He was forced into allying himself more and more with the Soviet Union and becoming more and more militant because the United States refused to recognize the legitimacy of the revolution. So it's like either you, I mean, at a certain point, like, I wish we could do peace, but the capitalists will not let you do peaceful transition because they recognize that the survival of their class depends upon defeating socialism. And if you build some sort of social democratic transitionary state, it's like putting somebody on a conveyor belt with a saw blade. They can see the saw blade spinning. They can see themselves slowly moving toward, but there's going to be eventually be a point, whether you do revolution or whether you do, slow democratic transition, there is a point where the capitalist class will be executed. There will be a point when the last capitalist dies, whether you do it through revolution or you do it through reform. And so the capitalist class treats reform as just as much of a threat as revolution. This is what I think this is why I'm a centrist Marxist, right? I don't care how the last capitalist dies. That's what that means. I don't care if the last capitalist dies because we do some sort of revolution and there is a equitable redistribution of his property via force, or if we were to do some sort of electoral victory and then use the state to take the, expropriate the wealth. I don't care. I really don't care. But the reality is, every time you do the elections, the capitalists are not going to go, well, I guess you won. I love democracy. I guess I'll give you my wealth. No, they're going to take their wealth and they're going to hire a bunch of mercenaries. They're going to hire a bunch of fucking scumbags and they're going to try to fight. They're not going to go out with a whimper. They're not going to let you euthanize them. I'm using that as a metaphor because being a capitalist is not something that you're born. You're not born a capitalist. You're born a human. Capitalism is about rights to certain property. If you own a factory, you're a capitalist, right? If I take that capitalist or take that factory with eminent domain with the government, you're dead as a capitalist, but you continue to live as a human being. So when I say kill all capitalists, I don't necessarily mean take them out and behind the back and shoot them into a mass grave. I mean, like, take the property that makes them a capitalist. And that's what, and by the way, that's what capitalists find so offensive. What is a capitalist without capital? A proletariat, a worker. Capitalists will do an exterminationist, genocidal civil war to avoid becoming you and having to work for a living. So, like, my feeling is I don't want war. I don't want revolution because revolution means war, means death, means violence. They force us to do it. Look what happened to Spain. Look what happened to Chile. Look what happened to Brazil. Look what happened to Honduras and El Salvador. Look what happened in Indonesia. Look what happened in China. Look what happened anytime there was an attempt to just do a general soft transition with government regulation and slow transitions. Look what happened in Sweden. Like, you can see it time and time again. Capitalists are not going to allow themselves to be voted out of all of their property. They will do civil wars every single time. Mike, did you buy Tesla puts yesterday? They're down 10% today. Yeah, I made $4,200 and I closed the trade. I tweeted about it. I bought Tesla puts yesterday during the bubble, and then I sold those puts today for a $4,200 profit. And that was that. Is that why you're not shilling? Of course I'm gonna shill. What, you think I go to my because I did some sort of cheeky little trade that you're not gonna pay me? Fuck you, I'm working, bitch. Yeah, Elon Musk is gonna say, shucks, fine then, if legislation is written to tax about 99%. Exactly, he'll take one of his hundreds of billions of dollars and hire a fucking SEAL Team 6 and pay each member of SEAL Team 6 $50 million to go assassinate Bernie Sanders. There's not gonna be a gentle transition. Do you think China will take that next step? What next step?
You can't do it. The United States lost the war in Vietnam. It lost it in Iraq. It's losing it in Ukraine. I mean, look at it. And these are among the poorest countries on earth to which the U.S. is losing. And the Europeans are left in a way one almost has to sympathize. They're irrelevant. They've become not the literal opposite of what they were 3 or 4 centuries ago. The center of the universe, the apogee of culture, the colonial master, all of that. It's all gone. Europe is a footnote. Living in a world of fantasy where being unable to stop the Russians with the United States, they actually think that they're going to do it without the United States. I mean, these are levels of craziness that are part of the decline, I suspect, of all empires when they consume themselves. Last point. I am particularly struck with this crazy business of attacking federal employees in the name of efficiency. That is so laughable that one has to kind of take a deep breath because it's sort of overwhelming what you get here. 2.5 million civilian employees of the federal government versus 5 million working for state government and 15 million working for the local government. If you cared a damn about efficiency, or whatever that exactly means, your obvious targets would be local and state, but they can't get at those, so they go after the federal. That's not a decision of efficiency. That's a decision of where can we make a public performance, and they're making a public performance. It ruins the lives of those people. It destroys whatever function these agencies often had. It drives people entering the labor force, which is a larger number than those leaving the federal. They're all going to go into the private sector where they're going to bid down wages. At the same time that they can't control the inflation, you're ripping up your working class more and more and more, as if there were no end to this process. These are the desperate behaviors of a dying empire. There's really no other framework that I can think of that makes sense of this.
Well, aren't they trying to essentially destroy government agencies like the Postal Service, for instance, education, because they privatize it? They make money off it.
They live in a world, look, I'm part of it. I've been a professor of economics all my life. I grew up in that framework. I had to learn all of that. I had to teach it often. They live in a framework governed by the theory of economics, their theory.
The VIX index is 4815. Holy shit. Castro visiting Harlem. People think... Does anybody think Castro is bad? Does anybody here think Castro is bad? If you think Castro is bad, you are a fucking weirdo, because even liberals don't think he's bad. There's a lot of liberals who like Castro. Like you have to be a right-wing dumb shit to not like Castro. Like even liberals in America like Castro. The only people who don't like Castro are literally like disgusting. It's basically the same people who don't like Castro are the same people who like Israel. It's 1-to-1. Every single person who hates Castro loves Israel. There's no anti-Castro, Zionist people. My entire Cuban family does. Yes, they were probably kicked out of Cuba for having a slave plantation, okay? I'm sorry. Look at Harlem.
Yo no estudié esa carrera.
I did not study the career of looking like a gentleman in a business
A
suit.
mí no me quedó más remedio que
I only had to do it.
tener que luchar,
And I did not study to be a politician. I had
tener que aprender.
to learn the trade along the way.
Hicimos algunas guerras y lo interesante es que las ganamos.
And the interesting thing is that we waged a battle and we won.
Realmente para mí.
I mean, those were unforgettable days for me, the days when I came to the Teresa Hotel many years ago.
Era tal la hostilidad,
There was such hostility.
había tanta campaña.
There was such a campaign
Que yo pasaba por una zona
against our country
y me hacían así.
that I passed by one area and they did like this.
Yo no sabía qué quería decir aquello.
I did
pero
not know
me
what they
imaginaba
meant
que
by
era
that, but I
algo
could imagine that it was
poco amistoso.
something was wrong.
Pero todo cambiaba cuando llegaba a
But
Harlem.
everything changed when I came to Harlem.
Todo el
In
mundo-
Harlem, you did this.
Y con todo
I have a friend whose family came from Cuba to escape a dictator. She's a leftist, though, who I respect, so confused how she got to that. Basically, the United States of America is a massive superpower and the wealthiest country in the world. It is rational, if you are not in a Western country, to want to come to America as an individual. That is just a rational decision. It is going to, like, if you leave Cuba, go to the United States and get citizenship, for 99.99% of people, that's going to be an economic improvement in their life. It's a rational decision to make as an individual. That being said, the United States of America as a nation is committing crimes against Cuba and attacking Cuba's economy and isolated Cuba. How can you imagine a small island nation 70 miles off the shore of Florida is being sanctioned, it is being encircled, it is being attacked, and it's standing up? 90 miles, excuse me. He stayed in power for 50 years. I think it's ridiculous to deny that he was a dictator. There's nothing wrong with being a person in power for a long time. Nobody disagrees with that. Just because you were in power a long time doesn't mean you're bad. Especially when your country cannot engage in normal trade. It can't develop. It's under siege and attack. Our best president is the one who broke the taboo of only running twice. FDR ran 4 fucking times. And had he had if he had blood pressure medication, FDR would have been president for 10 fucking terms. And it would have been great. Nobody had a problem when liberal ass motherfuckers, run for 4 prime ministerships. When Tony Blair was prime minister for 12 years, none of you complained. When Angela Merkel was prime minister for, 16 years? No, none of you fucking cared. Shut the fuck up. So, I honest to God don't give a shit.
Rosemary here said all the personalities that...
What a king.
Which says that, and I mean this as blunt and as religious sounding in the negative sense of the term as I can make it. They live in a world in which whatever the private sector does.
Do you think a leftist should have let the American democracy collapse as FDR is often viewed as being the person who saved it? No, I disagree with those people. There's one big problem with accelerationism. There's one big problem with it. There's no guarantee that socialism wins. There's no fucking law of nature that makes socialism win. Things can always get worse. So that's why I don't think the idea that America could have allied with Nazi Germany. Imagine how the world is different if America allied with Nazi Germany.
Is efficient, more so than any other way of getting the job done. And anything that you can do to reduce the economic footprint of the government, thereby shifting the work over.
So then how does this play into Leninism? FDR gave so many concessions to the working class and eventually betrayed the movement. I mean, I think that's largely accurate. I think that's largely accurate. I think the main problem is that FDR isn't the one who betrayed the movement. It was the Democratic Party elites who were. I think FDR's vision for the future was a lot different than the people that replaced him. And it's because the Democratic Party was always a coalition party of all sorts of bourgeois and fascist elements. And so when FDR died, he wasn't able to hold those things. He didn't have a successor that was able to hold those things in check. And so they reasserted themselves. I think there's a lot, I think people's analysis is very, very, very superficial.
To the private sector will be an increase.
I think term limits are good. Constant power just turns rulers into autocrats. I don't care what you think. I don't care what you think. I don't think the world would be a better place if Bernie Sanders was forced out of the Senate. I just don't think that's a good argument. I think that's a good point. Now, I think a lot of people are mad because somebody like Nancy Pelosi stays in the Congress for so long and they're like, oh, if we just made a rule that would ban Nancy Pelosi, but I don't want to make a rule saying ban Nancy Pelosi. So I'm going to try to make something that looks neutral by say term limits. And it's like, no, I want to get rid of Nancy Pelosi and I want to keep Bernie Sanders. That's the rule I want.
Inefficiency from which all of us will benefit. They actually believe. It's like listening to a plantation owner in Louisiana in 1832 explaining how and why master and slave is the best possible arrangement for the human race to accomplish what it needs to produce. It's so obvious. It's just beyond needing to be explained. Yeah, you have these people. It's a small business mentality. I can do it. I'm doing it real well. If only the government rules and regulations weren't there, and if all the bad people that intervene in the free market, which is our modern religious icon, well then, yeah, they actually... To the degree that they are governed by any theoretical awareness at all, it is a simple-minded version of that simplistic mantra, which, you and I know, I went to the fanciest schools this country has, and that's what they taught us.
But it's dynamiting the very foundations that makes a capitalist system.
Listen, here's my feeling about term limits. Term limits are just a tool to try to block popular leaders. The elites control elite reproduction. All right, this is what you need to understand. Elites control elite reproduction. What does elite reproduction mean? It means, who are the people that get elected to Congress? Overwhelmingly, the people that get elected to Congress are rich people, are people that have connections to the Ivy Leagues or elite colleges, a small circle, the Pete Buttigiegs of the world, right? They're not people that have some sort of like democratic connection to their district or something. It's an elite reproductive system of mediocrity. Most of the people that are in Congress are mediocre, but they're connected to the right organizations. They're connected to the right status granting institutions. And so they are loyal to the elite system itself. And occasionally, because our system is not purely, by fiat, but there are some democratic valves and some democratic entry points and some systems that if the ball bounces the right way, a person that's outside that elite reproduction system can get into power. Bernie Sanders is an example of that. AOC is also kind of an example of that. Summer Lee is an example of that. People can organize and they can create a local democratic movement and win power. But that is usually around a charismatic individual who builds an institution of and a network of trust with people. Okay? And with term limits, you're knocking those people out. And they're the only way that we can take over the system or plausibly win over power within the system. And it takes those people decades to slowly build up because they don't have the boost that the elite reproduction system has. Like Pete Buttigieg was jammed into your face on every cable news channel. He was appointed to fucking a cabinet position. They're so desperate to force Pete Buttigieg down your throat because he's allied with and loyal to the donor class. They're trying to step all over AOC because she's not. Not saying that AOC is perfect. I'm just talking about elite reproduction. I'm talking about how these systems maintain themselves. So when you support term limits, all you're doing is you're preventing those people who come from outside the system from climbing up power. Bernie Sanders is a senator because he started small. The mayor of Burlington, right? He won by 10 votes. He had to run against the Democrats and the Republicans. Eventually he ran statewide for Senate. He lost to a Republican and a Democrat. Republican won. He ran again as an independent. And Bernie Sanders flipped Vermont from red to red. And he did so slowly over time. And then he was a congressman, right? He was a congressman at large of Vermont. And then eventually he was able to run for Senate. And it took him slow, incremental steps to get up to the point where, as a very old man, he could run for president against Hillary Clinton. If we had term limits, they would have knocked his ass out of that system very early, and he would have not been able to run, and he would have been forgotten by time. But the elites that come from the Harvard universities, the people that come from the capitalist class, the corporate lawyers, the CIA agents, they can reproduce those people and replace them. Like if Slotkin died tomorrow, hypothetically, or she decided to resign, could have another CIA agent running for Michigan Senate before your eyes could blink. But if Bernie Sanders were to go away, we don't have an easy replacement. That's why these concepts of term limits or artificial limits, they only help the status quo stabilize itself from outside disruptors who are gaining approval and support from outside what the elite reproduction system wants to produce. When you support term limits, you support the elites.
Work. The infrastructure's collapsing. You don't educate your population. We see what a privatized social service, postal service has done in England. It's a mess. It doesn't work.
What about for the Supreme Court? Here's my feeling about the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court is good when there are 9 socialists on it, and the Supreme Court is bad when there's not. That is my opinion of the Supreme Court. Now, how do we get 9 socialists out of the Supreme Court? Or what I should say is, how do we get a majority of the justices on the court to be just socialists? That's the only thing I care about. Here's the thing. I'm a socialist. I don't give a shit about the Constitution. The Constitution is a piece of paper. I don't have any reverence for it. It has no legitimacy outside of what you dumbasses give it.
From that introduction, aren't they, perhaps unwittingly, aren't they actually destroying the very structures that makes the accumulation of wealth in the long term possible?
Here's the way I understand it. They had that ideology, the private sector is the efficient, they've been believing that for 200 years, if not longer. You know, it has many names: liberalism, neoliberalism, laissez-faire, lots of language for the same basic idea. But they were always, and this is the way I understand it, they were always counteracted to some extent by sort of practical men and women who said to them, wait a minute, yet maybe, but if we don't solve this problem real quick, and the only agency that's going to do that is the government, we are going to be in deep trouble. Right? You know, we turn to the government to run the military when we're attacked because the private isn't quite. And then they will make a break. They will do what Roosevelt ended up doing in the 1930s. You know, they'll intervene in the labor market. There's a minimum wage. We don't care what market forces are. You don't go below that. And I want to remind people, even the conservatives had those. When the inflation was unmanageable in 1971, Nixon goes on the radio and television, 15th of August, 1971, and says, I am freezing all wages and prices in the United States. As of tomorrow morning, if you raise your price, Mr. Businessman, we're going to arrest you, and you're going to jail. Whoa. Okay, this is a kind of recognition. If you have the space, what we have now is a population increasingly persuaded, right up to the top, that there is no space. You can't afford the apparent solution of the government. You've got to do something. And the only thing they can think of, given the narrowness of our education, is that fantasy. They're going to save them.
If it crosses the U.S. border illegally, it's our job to stop it. People, money, products, ideas? Signs anti-immigrant spending bill reaching Trump-era heights. These are the Democrats. They created turnkey fascism. I hope he dies soon. Like, I really do hate President Biden from old age. From old age. No one will care. It'll be so funny to see how disrespectful Trump will be when Biden dies. That is funny. Mike, you like the ice tweet on accident? Yeah, I was making sure I had it for my I had it for my profile. Thank you for reminding me to unlike that though. If the bill included a dramatic spike in funding for ICE to surveil immigrant communities through its harmful tracking and ankle monitoring program, growing from 442 million to now well over 470 million. It also allocates $3 billion for ICE to detain 40,000 people at detention facilities. It gives ICE and CBP billions more to carry out violent assaults against immigrant communities. What a disgusting fucking piece of shit. They wanted to make sure you noticed that they were banning ideas, chat, because they put the cross smear over ideas. All right, how's the markets doing, chat? How are the markets doing? Wow, it looks like I kind of called the bottom, huh? This is what the Democrats are doing now.
Than what you just watched. I won't take it personally.
Slotkin introduces bill that will prevent Chinese vehicles from entering the U.S. Fuck you, CIA agent Slotkin. The Connected Vehicle National Security Review Act would lay down on the border to keep Chinese vehicles from entering the U.S. market. It's my first bill I'm introducing in the Senate. Fuck you. Slotkin is a former CIA agent officer who worked in national security roles in the Pentagon during the Bush administration. These are the Democrats that Chuck Schumer likes. Oh, chat. By the way, I wanted to show you the funniest thing I've seen as a joke. Via was streaming on her channel this game, which I guess is like a Sims type game, and she made me in the game. She sent me this clip.
Very accurate. Mike will go to bed at like 10 p.m. 11 p.m. Oh my god, no, literally, and I'll be gaming until like 3 4 a.m. Wait, what's wrong? Why are you getting up? My decisions have always been right. Oh my god, it's Mike!
She was just roasting me the entire time. She made me in the game.
This is also
And my character went to bed at a reasonable hour, 11 p.m. You know, when you wake up at 6 a.m., 6:30 a.m., you know, going to bed at 11 is a reasonable time. So she made me
so
in the
very
game,
accurate.
chat.
Mike will go to bed at like 10 p.m. 11 p.m. Oh my god, no, literally, and I'll be gaming until like 3 4 a.m. Wait, what's wrong? Why are you getting up? My decisions have always been right. Oh my god, it's Mike!
She even made this outfit, which is an outfit that I would wear. Like, I feel so roasted. I have this leather jacket. I have boots like this. Like, I'm totally cooked. I have that shirt. I could literally wear this outfit. My hair is that length. It's just, I'm completely cooked. Why do I dress like a black Republican? Yeah, that's the best way to describe my politics. What does VO think of your 6 a.m. crash outs? That's just what you have to deal with. How many subs to get you to cosplay the Sims version of you? Oh, that reminds me, chat. We're 4 hours into the stream. Sure. Sure. You think, oh, Mike, oh, wow, did you do well on your Tesla trade? Well, I don't need to pay you money. Fuck you. Yes, you do. Especially those of you pieces of shit who work from home. Those of you who know what options are. You motherfuckers, there's a lot, not very many of you that are putting in your 10% tithe. And if you don't want to support the stream because you don't want to pay me to work, which is disgusting and anti-leftist, remember there's one important reason to support my stream.
Mike from PA, who is as hideous on the inside as he is on the outside, which is rare. Mike from PA, enemy of the show, this dick-riding communist, bad empanada, Mike from PA, and Frogan. Fierce warriors. People like all these fucking journalists, Mike from PA, all these people, they are fucking co-signing. They are participating, and they are reading this type of deranged, inhuman cruelty. She's hyping up Mike from PA, who is literally the picture of like, oh, this man is, he is not a healthy man. I'm calling out supporters of snark, such as Mike from PA and all these leftist commentators who think they can get one up on me by sicking and participating and legitimizing the most crazed psychopaths on the internet.
People tend to hate people who are successful. No, I don't think that's true. I don't think success is what makes people hate you. I think it's success in spite of your efforts. You know what I mean? Like when someone succeeds and you don't want them to succeed, that causes bitterness. That causes you to be a hater, right? Like if I was failing, you think Ethan Klein would be bringing up 10-year-old articles to try to say that I did X, Y, and Z bad thing? If I wasn't one of the more successful political streamers on Twitch, do you think any of these people would give a fuck about me or bother insulting me?
I mean, every time I look, he has between 7,000 and 8,000 paying members, which is pretty.
Chat, every time he looks, we're between 7,000 and 8,000 paying members. So I don't want you to make Ethan Klein feel like I'm doing an Ethan decline. Okay? He likes to look a lot. He likes to look a lot. And just in case you think I exaggerate, right there, 7,773 paying members. Thank you, Ethan Decline. So if you listen, you may be ambivalent about supporting me, but every single time you hand me a subscription, every single time Ethan Klein sees that number go up, he gets a little bit angrier.
It's pretty disturbing, but it is what it is.
They would ignore me. I wouldn't matter. But the fact that, you know, we find them stupid and we're not intimidated and we're not scared and we're living our best lives, that's what they're mad about. H3, where they found out your average viewership?
3.8K average.
How much?
Right now, the past 30 days, 3.8.
Okay.
Wild.
Yeah, I know.
Chat, I need this. Can we get this wild on the soundboard? Mods! Mods! I need this on the soundboard.
I know.
Like
the fact that
that's lives. That's what they're mad about.
How much?
Right now, the past 30 days, 3.8.
Okay.
Wild.
Yeah,
I need that wild. I need that wild. Wild. You can hear the pain. You can hear the pain. Like, everybody in that stream knows that if they were to come onto Twitch and they were to stream 5 hours a day, 7 days a week, for years, they couldn't hit 4K. That is a totally unattainable number for them. Impossible. That's where the wild comes from.
How much?
Right now, the past 30 days, 3.8.
Okay.
Wild.
Yeah, I know.
Are they trying to say it's bad? No, they're trying to say it's unbelievably good. They're suffering because it's good. Do you understand what 5,000 or 6,000 live concurrent viewers is on Twitch? I'm one of the top streams in the entire world. Like, period. Let's take a look. I have 0.47% of all English viewers and 1.1% everybody who's watching Just Chatting. 1 out of 100 people watching Just Chatting are watching me in the entire world. Okay? Like, that's a lot. That's a lot. That's what they're suffering. That's so. Anyway, what I'm trying to say, chat, is when you subscribe, when you follow, when you like my shit on TikTok, not only are you helping me, not only are you supporting this stream, but you are also pissing off Ethan Klein. And I don't know about
Right
you.
now, the past 30 days, 3.8.
Okay.
Wild.
Yeah, I know.
Like,
The fact that they're able to succeed is a condemnation of the entire fucking movement.
I want to thank Clips from PA, chat. I highly recommend you follow Clips from PA. I want to thank you for this TikTok. Like, legitimately, this is one of the things that has made me so happy and made me laugh so fucking hard. I don't care if I'm the only one who's watching this on a loop. The pain in their voices, the frustration they feel is incredible. The other thing that's really funny is, like, I don't know if Ethan's like a stupid piece of shit or what, or he doesn't understand the reality of streaming or being an adult. But I don't defame him. I do not defame Ethan Klein. And if I have made a factual error, I immediately correct it. And I correct it thoroughly. So I have absolutely, you know, and even if you try to sue me, I'm an adult who carries umbrella coverage. So you're just going to be talking to my insurance company, and they have infinite lawyers. You're just going to burn up your own cash. It's actually the dumbest thing I've ever heard in my life.
America by a going backwards? What in the world is that? Go back to what?
You heard the Klein family likes to eat poop. I don't think that's correct, Stevers. And I think that is mean of you, and I'm going to give you an appropriate punishment. I don't think the Ethan Klein family eats poop. At least I don't have any firsthand knowledge of them eating poop, and I think that that is wrong for you to spread that misinformation because you don't have direct knowledge. All we know is that he implied it. Okay? He implied it on his stream. We don't know anything more than what he told us. Okay? So we would never imply. Oh, thank you so much, dude. Hold on. The perfect sound.
Hold on. Let me finish my thought, and if you keep trying to piss me off, I will disconnect from the call.
I don't. What is it called? What's the sound called?
Both metaphorically and literally. Let's not fillet Nazis.
That's a pretty good one.
Whatever it is that got you here. I mean, it's nuts.
Is it okay to monetize clips of you on YouTube? Here's kind of my opinion about that. If you are really good at it, I reserve the right to make you my editor. That's the only thing I will say. So you're gonna get you know, if you build up too well, then, you know, I'm just gonna take you and make you my editor. So as long as you are okay with that, Because if you're really good at it, then I'll make you my editor and we'll actually do really well. Because the reality is, I know more about how algorithms work than all of you do. And that's just the way it is. Unless you have a long track record of successful channels, you don't know more than me. And I don't say that to like flex. I just say that as I could help you make even better edits of clips of me. Like, I know what people will actually want to watch and what they won't.
And what they're doing is they're living out the fantasy. I would guess in other
words, go ahead. If you make clips of me and they do really well, the only proviso I have is you might have to work for me one day. And I wouldn't make you like lose money. By the way, that wouldn't be a project where you would lose money compared to your own channel. That would be better for you. Okay, just to make that clear. It's not like I would steal something that make your shit suck. Can I generally ask you a question? I promise I'm asking, so don't shake me. One time I was asking, someone brought up a blue something union and it made you angry. Why? What does it mean? Basically, unions are not perfect. There are a lot of unions that have anti-socialist leadership or are corrupt, whether it be with organized crime or they've been bribed by the company. Like, any organization can be stripped of its class character and basically turned against the rest of the left. Anti-solidaristic. Cop unions are also another example. Cop unions don't show solidarity with other unions. So they are not leftist.
Empires, as they declined, they began to appeal to their gods, to their fetishes, to their fantasies, because they had nothing practically workable left. We are borrowed up to here with our $35 trillion of national debt. It's way above our national GDP, which is not supposed to be. That used to be considered a no-no line. Our European allies don't do it as badly as we do it, although they're about to. Look at the Germans. There's a losing of your mind. Mr. Merz became the new, about to become chancellor there. He ran a campaign on preserving the...
What if I make a channel that looks like a hater channel, but I subtly draws positive perspectives, occasionally slowly turn the haters to fans? No. The other proviso is you have to make me look good. If you're making hater clips or making me look bad, I reserve the right to DMCA you off the internet. It has to be a pro Mike clips. It's propaganda only. I have no interest in being fucked over by anybody else. And I'm not going to do this like, well, I believe in internet. Fuck you. If you're not putting your own face on there, then it's DMCA-able as far as I'm concerned. If it's shit. If you're like making commentary and making arguments and points, I will. It's a different thing. I wouldn't DMCA someone on that usually, unless it was just like harassment or stalking or some shit like that. But yeah, I don't need you to steal my content to make me look bad. Just as edits out of context with no commentary. If somebody disagrees with me, criticizes me, and uses a clip of mine to criticize me, I don't think you should DMCA that, personally. But there's always exceptions to any rule. Can I bring up why I first unfollowed you? We regularly rated from Jack AM, and one of the regulars said you disparaged mutual aid, and it was like a whole thing for a day. No, I didn't disparage mutual aid. I disparaged the idea that leftists should ignore presidential politics in favor of mutual aid. And I said, this is a national show. We're going to talk about national issues. If I just tried to make a show about small local mutual aid projects, it would go nowhere and we wouldn't have a platform. The purpose of this platform is to talk about the national pressing issues, and leftists should be relevant to those at all times. Even when we get defeated in primaries, we should still be out there talking about it. That's what I said. Somebody tried to clip that out of context. I think that's a Destiny thing. That's like a Destiny subreddit thing. They tried to use that as a psyop against me, where it was like, Mike doesn't care about mutual aid, which is totally false. In fact, in the clip after that, I talked about how I had just done mutual aid with a group called Make the Road, which is a radical pro-immigrant group, which is probably being targeted by ICE right now.
German commitment to no government borrowing. Within days of the election, he completely reverses himself and now champions the biggest debt expansion in German history to build a military. Who's he going to fight? The Russians? That's a joke. The Chinese? That's a bigger joke. The United States? Perhaps the biggest joke of all. What? The only people he could use that for are the other Europeans. And I think somewhere we've seen that picture before. These are behaviors that people like you and me and others in the media are going to have a harder and harder time nailing down, because they are the desperate acts of a declining empire that doesn't know where to turn.
Let's talk about the tariffs. The tax cut, they proposed more tax cuts.
Right.
How is that all going to play out economically? You know, are they really, can they leave the military industrial complex alone, because they're not? There's a bill in Congress pushed by the Republicans to increase military spending by $100 billion over the next decade. So if they're not going to touch the military, which consumes half of all discretionary spending, I don't see how they're going to save that much money, first of all. And second of all, with these economic policies that cater to the oligarchic class, what are going to be the ramifications of that economically?
Well, I think what you're seeing, in part, let's start with the tariffs. There's something that's important about the tariffs that doesn't get the attention it ought to. If I read American politics, correct,
I've been banned in the H3H3 Reddit. I mean, are you surprised?
Then for at least the last 100 years, the Republican Party's major mantra has been either we're going to cut your taxes or we're not going to raise your taxes. We are the anti-tax party. And they go to every part of the population they can to sell that story. A tariff is a tax. That's all it is. It's a tax on imported objects that are produced elsewhere and sold here. In the early days of American history, these were called import duties because that's what they are. Calling them a tariff...
Didn't we start a revolution over that?
Yes, among other things.
Wild. 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 Chat, we're only 6 subs away from hitting the sub goal. You will get 1 free wild when we hit the sub goal.
That's right. That's right, because we weren't allowed to put them on us.
Yeah.
King George III made that decision. That's right. So here we have an anti-tax party whose major economic weapon, as of Mr. Trump, is a tariff. It's kind of a there's more evidence that something is really breaking down because they have to become advocates of the very thing they claimed in principle they were against. Very bizarre. And the same people out of whose mouth on the 4th of July comes anti-tax BS are now telling you about what a wonderful weapon the tariff is. The reason Mr. Trump uses it, by the way, is that Congress gave the president a lot of leeway about doing that, and so he can do it, and so he can play the role Mr. Trump likes to play, the angry God with his weapons, and he couldn't do that with many other weapons because they have to go through the Congress or through various procedures other than him just spouting off on Truth Social how he's going to do this or that, do it today, cancel it tomorrow, all this bizarre theatric. He's doing it because he can do it with that. There is no principle behind it, number one. Number two, you cannot know, and there's, by the way, tariffs are very old. There's nothing new. Countries have been throwing tariffs against each other for centuries. Why do I tell you this? Because there's an immense literature. I've had to teach courses in international economics. That's where that literature is. The students spend, 3 weeks going through articles and books, et cetera, et cetera. All right, so here's what we know. We know that a tariff you cannot tell people what a tariff will do. The reason is a tariff sets off a whole series of reactions. You can't know them in advance. In other words, everyone affected by a tariff has to make a choice about how they're going to respond. They will all respond, but how they do it it's like knowing in advance the chess move. You have some probabilities maybe, but you never know. The genius is the one who adjusts. So when Mr. Trump tells you the tariffs will do X, this is snake oil. This is nonsense. He doesn't know what that's going to do. He didn't even, in his first statements about the tariff, he kept saying it. The Chinese will pay the tariff. He had to have his advisors, some of whom I know, had to explain to him, and he couldn't get it. No, the tariff is paid by Americans to the American government. The Chinese don't pay any of it. You can imagine a reaction in China that might, yes, you can, but there's no reason to assume it. For example.
All right, chat, we hit it. We hit the 100 subs. You know what that means?
Wild. Wild.
Mike hit his sub goal again?
Wild.
One response to a tariff is a retaliatory tariff. Okay, you can't know in advance whether they will do that, and you can't know in advance what...
Well, I mean, you can kind of suspect it, right? Like, what is China getting from the United States in trade? Like, what is China's dependencies on the United States? What is U.S. dependency on China? Basically, the American argument is China gets US dollars from trading with the US. That is the benefit that the Chinese get. Hard currency of the US dollar. What does the United States get from China? Everything it needs to survive.
Products of yours, they will impose a tariff. Again, they don't have to do it across everything. Europe is busy taxing bourbon whiskey, and so are the Chinese for obvious political reasons, because it impacts Mr. Trump's economic base. But we don't know. If Canada cannot sell its electricity into the United States, well, then they're going to sell it to China. Is that really an advantage? The answer is no. Is that a possibility? Yes. In other words, the minute you understand what's going on, all you have from Mr. Trump and his associates is blather. What looks good on the evening news, we're going to do this, and it's going to have that result. That's exactly what he can't do. Nobody can do that. And even a passing awareness, if you're not a paid huckster, is you would say, well, this is going to hurt the relationship. It's going to lead to a lot of rethinking and choices among optional, and how they all add up and impact on us. I mean, the only honest answer is I don't know.
But isn't ostensibly aren't tariffs being imposed on the Canadians and others, one, to kickstart American manufacturing, and two, fill the gap of the tax cuts? Is that the ostensible reason for the tariffs?
That's the kind of thing you say, but that implies the pretense that you know that the line of causation will go from your tariff to that decision. For example, an automaker removing or relocating the assembly plant from Mexico into Texas or something like that. Yeah, but here's the problem. It is very expensive to move production facilities. They take years to establish, and they take almost as much time to relocate. And it is very expensive. No one, no businessman or woman I have ever talked to about this would ever make a decision because country A imposes a tariff. Even more so if that country were to behave in such a way as to say the tariff is temporary. The tariff is, why? Because who in the, you'd be crazy, spend billions, move your Ford plant from Oaxaca to Cincinnati, and then at the end of 3 years discover that the rationale is gone because this crazy president has decided to go bother somebody else with a tariff. You're then out a fortune of money. And then you really lose, because if you come to the United States, which he always neglects to tell you, you have to pay a lot more money in wages on top of the cost of the move. The intrinsic costs that an accountant in a multinational corporation will sit down and tell the CEO, this is what this is going to cost you. And that's one of the reasons the CEOs are very unhappy. I monitor a CEO program at Yale. The way Yale panders to CEOs, it brings them there, puts them in a lovely old colonial building, wines and dines them and sends them off on their way. And lo and behold, contributions come to Yale a few months later. But in any case, it's a nice sounding board. I like to pay attention. They are all afraid of saying anything publicly because Mr. Trump is punitive. But with the protection of anonymity, what they are willing to say to their friends and cohorts at Yale about, they don't want any of it.
I picked like the absolute perfect time to sell my puts. I was like near the bottom of the day.
Yes. They don't want the uncertainty above all else.
Amazing.
They can't make decisions. And so, by the way, that's one of the reasons we see worries now about recession. That's not about anything other than there's such a massive realization.
I do feel like the VIX is probably gonna decline from here. I can't imagine there's gonna be gigantic crashes. But maybe I feel like, okay, here's how I feel about the markets. I feel like we need one negative 5,000 day. I think if they had one negative 5,000 day, then I would say the crash was over. Like when people were truly fucking panicking, I feel like that would kind of end the volatility. I think that might do it, but I don't know. We might just have this like slow deflation. I can't really come up with any reason. It could either dramatically collapse, it could slowly deflate. I could definitely see another Donald Trump pump. It's just hard to say, you know, unless you have insider information, it's impossible to tell when that's going to happen. I bought stocks and sold them today, made close to 1,000. Does that count as a win? That sounds like a big win to me.
That we have no idea what this clown is going to do next. We can't make a decision. We can't decide to build a factory, let alone to move one, because we can't figure out where that ought to be. And making a mistake in this environment is deadly. By the way, that introduces another dimension that we haven't spoken about, but which at some point, and maybe on a...
The VVIX is 162, which is the long-term volatility. The highest it was previously was COVID, 152. Yeah, that's fucking batshit crazy, dude. That is fucking batshit crazy.
Different occasion. The United States is different now, Chris. from what it has been for a century.
All right,
hanging
chat.
out.
I wanted to show you this clip because it made my fucking day. This shows an attorney just absolutely bitch slapping ICE agents.
These people, these are ICE hanging out in front of my client's house. So we're gonna see what's up. Oh, it's too early for this, y'all. What's going on? Who do y'all represent? Who do y'all represent?
Who are you?
I'm the family lawyer here.
Okay, guess my identification.
Yeah, do you?
Yeah.
Okay, who do you represent?
HSI, Homeland Security Investigations.
All right, what's going on?
We need to talk to her, make sure she's doing okay.
Who? That's not her.
I work for
him.
Yeah.
We're looking for Amy.
For what?
We're doing a welfare check on her to make sure she's doing okay. That's
What's
all part of
what's the basis?
Listen, I can tell you.
Okay.
You're recording us, aren't you?
Yeah.
Okay.
Immigration court case has been closed by the judge. We're just waiting on what are we waiting on?
Just for the priority date.
Priority date for her green card.
She can request her green card.
Perfect. We still need to talk to her.
Okay, I can set up an appointment at my office. We can do that.
Perfectly fine. You got a card?
Nah, but I can give you my name and number. Come on, man. I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know. She's around somewhere, I'm assuming.
Again, you need to talk to the sponsor and the...
Okay, so now you need to talk to the sponsor too. You say you need to talk to her. Now, who you need to talk to so I can set you up.
Well,
because I'm trying to prevent you all from coming back into this neighborhood. You understand? And she's doing fine. I don't know what. Again, I know what you're here for. I don't know if this is the first time this has ever happened. So this must be a new policy.
Any other questions?
Nah, you. All right. Yeah, you too.
Fuck out of here, you pissant fucking fascist fucks. They should be in uniforms. I can tell you if 5 dudes start chilling on my property, I'm not gonna react in a gentle way if they're out of uniform in civilian clothes, up on my driveway milling around. Get in a fucking uniform. And oh, by the way, this is a huge. Can I just say that the immigration attorney being a Tesla owner is the biggest sell signal for Teslas I've ever seen, because these are exactly the type of people that used to love Teslas, who are now going to get rid of this motherfucker and never get another Tesla. An immigration attorney who probably bought his Tesla last year or the year before Elon went completely right-wing lunatic. He's never buying another fucking Tesla.
Because
that's the exact type of person who got a Tesla. The exact, if you were to say, Mike, what is your quintessential example of someone who bought a Model 3 in the year 2022? For me, immigration attorney. Immigration attorney. What the fuck are you? What is Elon offended his entire base, which is these kind of upscale left-leaning professionals? What a dumb fuck.
Really have an economic competitor. We never had that. As per your own remark at the beginning, the Soviet Union may have been a military problem, but it was never an economic problem. It was much too small, much too backward, much too weak, and that's through all the way till it collapsed in 1989. It just wasn't. China is. It already is. And not to speak of the population, not to speak of the BRICS alliance it has erected. I mean, everything is now qualified by the fact that we, the U.S., have something we did not have before, which is an entire competitive totality. China and the BRICS are over, if you add them up, are over 50% of the world's population. The United States is 4.5%. You got to keep this somewhere in your head, what we are talking about here. If you add up the GDP of the G7, the US, Canada, Japan, Britain, France, Italy, and Germany, it's about 27, 28% of the world's output. If you add up China and the BRICS, it's 35%. It's already a bigger economic unit than we are. Every country in Asia, Africa, Latin America, thinking about building a railroad or borrowing money or expanding its medical care, they used to go to New York or Washington or London and get the help. They still go. They still propose. But as soon as that's done, they send the same team to Beijing or New Delhi or Sao Paulo, and they're bargaining. Who's going to give me the better deal? And they're in a better position than we are to do that, which is why the railroads of Africa are being built by the Chinese and the ports in Latin America and so on. It's relentless, the decline of this empire and the rise. I don't know if it's going to be a Chinese empire. I don't know if maybe their commitment to multilateralism or nationalism is genuine or not. How can I know? But the decline of this one, unmistakable, unless you need to deny it, which you and I know is the air we breathe in this country.
I want to talk about the SWIFT, the world's reserve currency, the dollar. Alfred McCoy argues that's the final end point of the American empire. If that happens, that the dollar is no longer the world's reserve currency, the empire is impossible to sustain because the Chinese and others won't buy our debt, which is what treasury bonds are. Do you agree, and do you see that coming?
I do not agree. And I don't mean to be disrespectful. Let me explain. The history of capitalism has...
You think China will ever unleash the solidarity with other socialist powers that the USSR did? What other socialist powers? The problem is, okay, when you're talking about, like, who are the other socialist countries right now? Like, you have what? Vietnam? Well, Vietnam and China have their own nationalist rivalries. They have their own kind of like, oh, we're going to play the US against, you know, off each other. You know, Cuba is a very small country. You know, there's a whole, like, there's a historical rivalry between Southeast Asia and China, right? I personally think that the worst part about China today is that they basically operate with the Star Trek Prime Directive fucking foreign policy. China has this very strict non-interference strategy, you know, and I know why they do it, which is like, hey, we're not here to tell you how to do your shit. We just want to make deals that are good for both of us. And I get that. I understand that. But I think it's naive. I think it's a naive position. Because the United States of America is not going to just let China live. LAUSD confirms plainclothes federal agents tried to question kids at 2 elementary schools in Los Angeles Monday, but were denied entry by administrators. Superintendent Carvalho said the agents claimed they had parental permission to question the kids, but it wasn't true. Carvalho said the agents were seeking to talk to 5 children who came to this country as unaccompanied minors and are in the care of legal guardians. LAUSD's legal team is responding. The agents did not have warrants to access the campuses. Yeah, the Gestapo. The Democrats love funding the Gestapo.
Always produced people who fetishize one or another aspect. It is a system. And it's as important in the reproduction of that system that the production of goods and services happens in certain ways, that the exchange in markets happen, and that money, as the kind of lubricant, if you like, plays the appropriate role.
Department of Homeland Security will start monitoring DHS to begin screening alien social media activity for anti-Semitism. Today's U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services will begin considering aliens' anti-Semitic activity on social media and the physical harassment of Jewish individuals as grounds for denying immigration benefit requests. This will immediately affect aliens applying for lawful permanent resident status, foreign students, and aliens unaffiliated with educational institutions linked to, affiliated with educational institutions linked to anti-Semitic activity. There is no room in the United States for the rest of the world's terrorist sympathizers, and we are under no obligation to admit them or let them stay here. Aliens, social media content that indicates an alien endorsing, espousing, promoting, or supporting anti-Semitic terrorism, anti-Semitic terrorist organizations, or other anti-Semitic activity as a negative factor in any USCIS discretionary analysis when adjudicating immigration benefit requests. This guidance is effective immediately. So they're going to be monitoring social media for wrongthink. Disgusting.
All of those things are necessary. Money, the US dollar, very important. But the system, like all systems, has within it the capacity to adjust if one or another of the elements. You know, it's a little bit like doctors explain, if you lose your left arm, it turns out your right arm can do all kind of things, and your body will kind of adjust. Yes, you will always know you don't have a left arm, but you will be amazed at what your right arm can do, or your left eye, or your right eye, or different parts of you. It's that way. So it used to be thought that the great evil of capitalism was the banker or the people with the money. Well, yeah, they are important, but they are not the beginning and the end anymore.
Chinese non-interventionism is a purposeful divergence for the Soviet Union. It is born out of a more non-aligned mentality developed along with the rest of the third world. In a multipolar world, China leads by example, and other countries will adopt Chinese development practices. Yes, they've been proven to be more efficient. That comment is exactly what I'm worried about, because it makes perfect sense. And this is the biggest downfall for China. The problem with China is that in China, you're rewarded for being competent and intelligent and making sense. That is not how the rest of the world works, unfortunately. Okay? So if the Chinese are like, I'm going to go around treating everybody else as an equal, and we will do mutually beneficial arrangements, and we will respect each other's sovereignty, that's not going to work. Not because I don't think China will hold up their end of the bargain, but because the United States of America is a fascist state that upholds international fascism. And so you walking around saying, I'm going to treat you like an equal, is antithetical to their philosophy, their beliefs. The United States hates equality. It hates justice. That's what it's built on. So if you walk around saying, I'm going to promote justice and fairness, they see you as an enemy to be destroyed. So China needs to build alliances, you can't be unaligned. They're aligning against you.
more than anybody else.
Like, that's the problem with this strategy. Like, I think it's a good strategy. I wish other countries acted like that. But the Western countries are chauvinists. The Western countries are racist. They think they are superior. Okay? They think that your position is to serve them. That Western powers dominate and live in luxury, and you live in dirt and starve. And that's how they think it ought to be forever. So if you're walking around going, I'm going to treat people fairly and equally, and I'm going to help them develop, they'll see you as a mortal enemy.
No other part is it's a system. So here's the way I understand it. Part of the decline of the empire is a diminution in all of the signs of empire. You know, the sign of the British Empire was that the pound sterling was the global currency. We now know that the British Empire is a vague, fading memory because nobody cares about the British pound sterling. You know, just the British barely do, and nobody else.
But Rick, when they dropped the pound sterling in the 50s
Right.
as the world's reserve currency, Great Britain did go into a recession, a pretty deep recession.
Yes.
I mean, economically, it suffered.
But Britain's decline is a century old. Britain's decline starts in the 19th century, you know, and then is wiped out in World War.
I think their best bet is that eventually the entirety of the West will become pariahs. That's not how the world works. We are animals struggling to survive against nature. Resources are necessary. Like, we're not orbs. If we were orbs and we could just exist, that'd be one thing. But for you to exist, there is a constant consumptive aspect. You need the energy. You need shelter. You are constantly needing resources in order to live. That is the natural coercion that the West and capitalists rely upon. You are continually in need of food, of shelter, of water, of medical care. Like, and so that natural coercion of being a physical, biological being is what they leverage to get you to cooperate. And so unless China can build an alternative where people can find and fulfill those economic and, you know, those biological necessities, those material necessities, then the people who have a lot of them are going to be the one who make the rules. And right now, that's the Western world. They're the more wealthy, materially powerful countries. So unless you can build an alternative, you will fail.
War I and again in World War II, and it's giving away bits and pieces.
Okay, we got to look at this chat. I'm like malding. I'm malding right now. U.S. government submits memo justifying deportation of Palestinian activist Mahmoud Khalil for beliefs instead of criminal activity. They want to deport him for his beliefs. Secretary of State Marco Rubio states that while Khalil's activities were otherwise lawful, his presence would undermine U.S. policy to combat anti-Semitism around the world and in the United States, in addition to efforts to protect Jewish students from harassment and violence in the United States. So in other words, they're saying anti-Semitism to mean opposing Zionism. Condoning anti-Semitic conduct and disruptive protests in the United States would severely undermine that significant foreign policy objective. So in other words, we're going to control the speech of Americans because we have foreign policy justifications. This is the end of the constitutional order. As I told you before, the Constitution is nothing but a piece of fucking paper, and they're using it like toilet paper. Judge Jamie Comins has ordered the U.S. government to produce evidence that Mahmoud Khalil ahead of a hearing Friday to determine whether the government continued detaining him during immigration proceedings. Despite earlier claims by DHS spokesperson Tricia McLaughlin that Khalil's activities were aligned to Hamas, the government has not provided any evidence to support this accusation and has made no reference to the group in its most recent filing. Khalil's attorneys Mark Van der Hoyt and Johnny Sindanis stated, after a month of hiding the ball since Mahmoud's late-night unjust arrest in New York and taking him away to a remote detention center in Louisiana, immigration authorities have finally admitted they have no case whatsoever against him. There is not a single shred of proof that Mahmoud's presence in the America poses any threat. Khalil, in a letter from jail, has rejected the anti-Semitism accusations that Jewish students have written to the court in support of his character. It is an absolute, total fucking lie. You don't have freedom of speech if you criticize Israel. I always knew it was going to go this way. I always knew it was going to go this way. But seeing it actually happening, censoring American speech for a foreign fascist genocide,